Hi, everybody. Scott Costa, publisher of TED Magazine. Thanks for joining me for another edition of the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. And again, a huge thank you to everybody who continues to download episodes and talk to each other and give me feedback about the podcasts. I really appreciate it. We're up on part 2 of a podcast that I did with a regular contributor to TED Magazine and regular contributed to the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. That's Andrea Olson. She's an author and she's a customer centricity expert. And she wrote this book, What to Ask, How to Learn What Customers Need But Don't Tell You. She was a podcast guest. We did part 1. I posted it about a week ago. The conversation just kept going and going. It was great. And I enjoyed the conversation. I certainly recommend you go back and check out part 1 if you haven't done that yet. This is part 2. Because we still had 20 minutes to go and I didn't want to make you sit through a 45-minute podcast. We talk about giving your responsibility of your customer data and information to just your sales representatives. We talked about your NPS score and what Andrea thinks of that. That's interesting. And plenty more during this podcast. You're going to want to check it out. So here it is, part 2 of my conversation with Andrea Olson and her book, What to Ask. Everybody's so diversified now, they make so many products.
Sure.
Is there a danger in, I make widgets and I make shoes and I make hair care products and I make, again, so I'm not picking on specific electrical manufacturers, but there are a lot of manufacturers who make a lot of different products in the electrical world. They acquire other companies.
Sure.
And they become not just, this product line, but they do these too, and they do this too. And they're not necessarily connected, but they do a lot of products. Is there an inherent danger that I don't know if call it dissatisfaction with one product diminishes the brand of all products? Or is it a situation where you have to kind of, get the feedback so you understand, how the whole package fits together?
I mean, that kind of goes back to brand architecture a little bit, right? So think of Procter and Gamble have so many sub brands and so many products, usually health and beauty, but other things, right? So if product 1, has a recall and it's branded as something else, Procter and Gamble may not take too much of a hit, right? From an image perspective. But if it was branded as Procter and Gamble, then you've got this closer connection. So I'd argue that there's cases where companies will architect it to protect themselves for those type of situations. On the other hand, nowadays with the internet, right? It takes a quick Google search to find out who the parent company is, right? And you've seen things on social media where it's like hashtag boycott Nestle or whoever, for whatever reason. So it kind of goes back to how do you want to serve your customer? And how do you architect your organization to serve your customer the best? And if that's a parent umbrella company with a lot of little small companies that each of those have the ability to get closer to the customer and understand what their needs are, or if you think, hey, we can do it under one umbrella, it depends on the size. It depends on the situation, and it depends on your organization's internal capabilities.
All right, so let's get into the sales guys now. And here's where they're going to, again, more emails for Scott. I'm excited about this. One of the things that you write in the book is about the danger of sales folks. And let me get the exact, see if I can get it under control here. I want to make sure I got it right. But having all of your customer data and knowledge lie within your sales team, basically. And the danger of that. Giving sales reps sole access and control over customer relationships. And again, you got to read the book, but there's some concern there, isn't there?
Well, I'll tell you, I worked for a company many years ago where they wanted to put in place a CRM, right? We talked about the fact that there was no way marketing could really effectively communicate with all the customers en masse with whether it doesn't really matter what it was, whether it be a sale or whether it be announcement of a new product, et cetera. And this was because all that customer data was in the hands of the sales force. So started down the road of implementing a CRM platform, nothing fancy. And it was okay, try to get some data from some sales databases, like who purchased what, that's great. But it was really incomplete because there was a lot of prospects out there that, their data had no home. And come to find out, this was a global organization, like multi-million-dollar organization. Reached out to the sales force, kind of had to do a whole buy-in process of like, this is not us trying to take sales from you, right? Please understand the intent here. And they ended up having to fax in, this is a long time ago, fax in photocopies of business cards. That was the entire sales pipeline for the company with thousands of employees.
Yeah.
Every prospect that they had was on a business card, and who knows where that prospect was in kind of that buying process. So think about that from a security perspective for the organization. How do you do sales projections? You ask yourself, what do you think? I think I'm around here, and they're going to sandbag it a little bit, right? And, how is the company going to grow? Right. And so everything was under control of sales. Don't get me wrong. Love sales guys, worked with sales guys, headed sales teams. Sales is great. But from an organizational safety perspective, you can't have everything in that camp. You can't.
There's a strong difference too. And I'm not, again, I've talked to a ton of sales guys who are members of the association. They're all great people, but there's a strong difference between, again, sort of sales representative information and real customer sales data. And I think we have to accept that, there are, when I get my customer sales data through point of sales information, whatever it may happen to be, that shows real results. I mean, sometimes there's sort of I'm gonna call it a bias, but I think sort of a mindset of that data is not really correct. Listen to what the sales guy is saying, because he'll tell you what's really happening out there, because he's out in the field every day. Do you see that? Is that something that's also kind of out there? Well,
I mean, it's a trap, because those two things aren't, I'd frame it as this. The point of sale data is historical information, right? Yeah. This is what's happened in the past.
Good point.
It does not mean that this is going to happen again in the future, right? And you could say, well, yeah, people buy wear parts, et cetera, et cetera. I get that. But it doesn't mean they might go, God, I'm on a budget crunch. I'm going to look at alternative wear parts somewhere else, right? So that always can happen. The sales guys are usually seeing the customer in the day-to-day and getting a general vibe of like where they're at in regards to future purchases, organizational growth, organizational barriers. Like, we got budget season coming up. We're going to have to wait until we get that approved before we can buy something simple like that. So these two things shouldn't be at odds. They're just two very different things with very different functions. Historical information is valuable, but again, it doesn't predict future behavior 100%. And then the field sales guys, their insight is actually, to an extent, just a sample of what the organization needs to know more prolifically. And I think the biggest challenge with sales is that that's their gem, right? That's what makes me valuable, is knowing this information. And so they keep it close to the chest, and they only give out what they think is going to be important for their growth and the organization's growth. And the rest is what makes them important. And that's the trap, is that guy goes away, right? All that information goes away. Right. And the organization overall can't grow to improve the customer experience, right? Yeah. Let's go a whole different direction and say something like accounting. Okay. Accounting, they don't deal with customers. They don't even care. But let's say that accounting process, that billing communication, is super clumsy, super annoying, super delayed. It totally messes up customers, kind of end of month, reconciliation budgets. But if accounting has never talked with customers, never deal with customers, never understood their context, they can't improve that process. I mean, this is just a really rudimentary example, but that's the point, is that everyone needs to be exposed and become close to customers. It should be part of their job description. right? Because new ideas can come from anywhere.
Right. So the organizational mindset, does that need to, today's strategy may not fit tomorrow. Does the mindset have to continue to sort of, chase the customer? Kind of what you said. So you have sales rep data telling us what's happening out there. You have CRM data that shows, again, some historical, but it's not like a be all do all. If you just do this one thing, it's all going to work out great for you. Does the mindset in management need to continue to evolve beyond this book, beyond 2022, to who knows what's going to happen next, because we need to continue to grow with our data and our knowledge and our customers.
Yeah. And yes. And I think the problem is that we look at things too prescriptive and too literally, right? It's tell me how to do it and I'll do it. Well, no matter what book, there's some great books out there I've read with some wonderful prescriptive approaches. But if you think about anything you've ever done historically, anytime you were at school where they told you, here is a process, here is a method. Once you apply that in the real world setting, in a real world context, you always have to adapt it a little bit, right? You kind of go, well, that premise is good, but when I try to actually do this, it doesn't really work. I mean, think about how you do service on something, right? There might be a manual on how to service it, but you know that the field guys that really know how to service it say, you don't have to do this step. Actually, it's so much easier if you do this and that, because that's real world knowledge. Right. So when we think about tell us the way to do this, we're not thinking. We're just trying to check the box and go autopilot and say, just tell me what I need to know about customer. And then I can move on beyond that to where I want to go. And it's a process, right? You have to learn this as a skill. And as an organization, you need to shift the organization to say, this is something we're all going to learn. We're all going to do. It's going to be part of our DNA. And it doesn't matter if we have this strategy where we're going to grow through acquisition, or we have this strategy where we're going to make a whole bunch of new, let's say, tech-oriented products. That can always still be the foundation to fuel either of those approaches or another approach. So we have to kind of get out of this mentality of saying, hey, tell me what to do and I'll do it, as well as the fact that it's not understanding that it's a discipline, that it's something we have to kind of do and practice and learn and use it as a change agent going forward.
Yeah. So rank this for me. Ready? What do you want to understand more? Do you want to understand people more, or do you want to understand business more? Who wins? People? Because a lot of people, a lot of folks are like, I'll give you a chance to think while I give you an example. It's like a lot of folks are like, hey, did you see what Target is doing? Oh, what are they doing? Well, they started this program to, increase revenue by doing these things. And then on the business side, people are like, oh, that's a B2C thing, not a B2B thing. That doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
And so what's more important? You know what I mean? So like, what's more important? Should we be concerned about understanding people who are making decisions, or should we be more concerned about business and running a business?
Okay, so if you take the people out of the business, what do you have?
Yeah, you got vans, they can't drive themselves, and a lot of really cool.
Not yet, no.
Yeah. Because you don't have any people. All you have is business and branding. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You just have stuff, right? Yeah. And so when you think about people, there's people as customers, there's people as employees, there's people as supply. It's all people.
Yeah. And
when we look so myopically at saying that's not our industry, that's not our product, that's not B2B, etc. Think about how many ideas, approaches, concepts that you're just automatically filtering out because you're saying this doesn't apply to me, right? And you have to think that innovation comes from all different places, and to cut out, heck, over 50% of the potential ideas because they're B2C. Or, hey, that's not my industry. It's like every customer is not just dealing with your industry. They're dealing with every industry.
Right.
And they're having those experiences. And so those become the bar that actually you need to achieve. And you can say, well, listen, all of our other competitors, nobody's really going that far. It kind of saves us from doing the effort, and we're the best of the worst. So, because it's not like cable company, right? We're the best of the worst type of thing. Wow. You know what? Good effort there. I mean, that's just being lazy, right? You could move so far ahead of your competitors that they will never catch up with you if you actually took some time to understand people and said, we're going to do something with that knowledge and actually change this industry. And we love to read. There's, Jim Collins, Good to Great, right?
Yeah,
that
right.
book. We love to read these stories about these amazing companies that just did these amazing things, and it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
But then when it comes down to, okay, what are you going to do? It's like, yeah, well, we're okay.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he sold a lot of books and good for him. But, how do you actually take that knowledge, these stories, and do something with it? And it starts with understanding people. You look at any of those stories and it all start with people.
Yeah. Okay. So a little bit of a challenge here, because I don't want to give away the details that are inside the book, but you dedicate a few pages to NPS scores, which I think everybody, Net Promoter Scores, which I think everybody out there has done those before. So I'm not going to, again, you got to read the book to find out the details of why you have this answer, but on a scale of 1 to 10, get it? It's an NPS question.
Yeah, funny.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank NPS scores? Scale of 1 to 10.
Okay. So, all right, let's go. Let's use a scenario.
Okay.
I talk to, survey, reach out to your listeners, and you receive an NPS score of 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do with that information?
Oh, we think we're great. We don't have to do anything.
Oh, good. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
but am I wrong? It's like, we must be doing everything. 8.5 out of 10. We must be like, why would we put out new Coke when people love Coke? We have an 8.5.
Well, I'm not going to get too much into the book, but there's a lot of detail there about why 8.5 is really kind of just a milquetoast type of number. The other end of the spectrum is, let's say you got a 3. Let's say you got a 3 and you were shocked, right? You're like, oh God.
Nobody gets a 3.
Terrible.
But yes. Yeah.
Let's say it was a 3.
Yeah.
How did you not know this already?
Right, exactly.
How did you not know that your customers, your listeners were dissatisfied, or there was some pattern, some behavior somewhere that already indicated this? So what does that 3 tell? The 3 doesn't tell you jack, right? Because if you didn't already know that, forget it, right? The number just makes you feel something. Yeah. So it's really a matter of that closeness to you would never have to do a Net Promoter Score if you already knew what your customers thought and felt and actually engaged with them.
So is the Net Promoter Score, is some of the, again, questions you're asking your customers, is it really just sort of a self-confirmation? Like, I don't really want to know more about my customers. I just want to confirm that I know about my customers. Is it kind of backwards sometimes? I mean, do we have to be careful that, we want to learn more about our customers. We want to really know what they think about us. But sometimes I think couched inside the questions are, well, we have a pretty good idea already in the first place. Let's just confirm that we're right.
Oh, yeah. 9 times out of 10. That's 9.9 times out of 10. That's what it is, right? Those numbers end up on board reports or annual reports of like, this is where, what does anyone in the organization learn from that information? What can they do with that information? What does it say about customers? It says nothing. It's kind of like giving yourself a B+ and saying, look, we're doing pretty good, and applying it to this kind of cover in regards to organizational culture. Like, well, we're just going to rally the troops. It's like, look, you're doing good. Keep it up. That's the only function that it really can possibly serve. And, if it's the same all the time, I mean, usually those scores stay fairly flat. It's like, well, then Whoopee. That's not a motivator. That doesn't change my behavior. And if so, how would I or should I change my behavior to change that number? And that number doesn't tell you how to do that.
Yeah. The great thing is you boil this all down. You're like, this must be an 800-page book. It's not. You boil it all down into a very, again, what I call a quick read, really simple. Here it is again. What to ask. People can see it. What to Ask, Andrea Olson. Just a great book. Again, becomes available June 14th. Doesn't mean it's only available on June 14th. You can buy it on June 15th and every day after it. I strongly recommend that folks do share it with their coworkers, share it with, share some of the knowledge, pass it around, make sure that everybody is learning more about what they need to be talking to their customers about and what feedback they're getting and what to do with it. Just a great book. I'm really excited that you wrote this. Thanks for writing it.
Thank you. You didn't mention the footnotes.
Oh, the footnotes. Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning that. So the footnotes are spectacular, almost to the point of distraction. They're so good. It's like I'm almost looking for the next footnote because they're so good. So I, don't lose your train of thought, but they're really great, and it's just a great book. And thanks for writing it. But thanks for coming on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast and talking about it. Again, available everywhere: Amazon, Target, everywhere you want to buy a book.
Pre-order it now if you want to. Yeah,
you can pre-order it. Do what you got to do, but get your hands on this thing. And Andrea, thanks for joining me on the podcast, and thanks for talking about it with us. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it on so many levels.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And then just a quick note, if folks have questions about this podcast, other stuff that we're doing at TED Magazine, questions about the book, or want to get in touch with Andrea, still two ways you can get in touch with me. You can send me an email, scosta, SCOSTA @NAD.org. Give me a phone call, 314-812-5311. Love to hear from you, trade some ideas until we get a chance to talk again. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for listening to the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast.